All right, so today we're going to talk about proving if two triangles are congruent using two postulates, SSS, which stands for side, 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 and SAS, which stands for side, angle, side. So the first postulate we're going to use is the side, 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 or SSS congruent postulate, which says that if you have two triangles and if all three sides of one triangle is congruent to all three sides of the other triangle, then that makes the two triangles congruent. So if three sides are congruent, then the two triangles are congruent. So that's the side, 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 which means that three sides of one triangle is congruent to the three sides of the other triangle. And so this is how you would prove it or show it on the picture here. So if I'm trying to prove these two triangles are congruent, you need to show that the three sides are congruent. And so they're marked here on the picture, right? So DE is congruent to JK because it has three slashes. And then EF is congruent to KL, segment KL. And then segment DF is congruent to segment JL. So we show all three sides were congruent to the three sides of the other triangle. And so using the SSS, the side-side-side congruence postulate that we just looked at, we could conclude that these two triangles are congruent. Once again, make sure that the letters when you say the two triangles are congruent matches up. Okay, so that's the side-side-side congruence postulate. The next postulate you can use besides side, side, side is what's called a side angle side congruence postulate. And so instead of having all three sides, we have two sides of one triangle congruent to two sides of the other triangle. And then this angle, what's called the included angle, and that angle has to be between the two sides that you're looking at. And so this is what we call the side angle side is congruent to the side angle side. And so if that's the case, then we could conclude that the two triangles are congruent. So we have two sides that are congruent, and then we have the angle in the middle of those two sides, which is called the included angle that's congruent. And so if that's the case, then these two triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. Okay, so we have two methods, side, 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 and side, angle, side. And so if I have these two triangles here, you can use either SSS or SAS, depending on what information you have here. And so we know that the information that's marked here is that the segment TY is congruent to segment XY with the two slashes, and then segment SY is congruent to segment WY with the one slash. And then these two angles here in the middle are congruent. So angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent because whenever there are two lines intersecting, the vertical angles are always congruent according to the vertical angle theorem. And so we can establish that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 using the vertical angle theorem, which says that all vertical angles are congruent. And so you can tell by the marking here, these two triangles are congruent because we established that the side, angle, side of one triangle is congruent to side, angle, side of the other triangle. So therefore, these two triangles are congruent. So that's how we use the side, angle, side, and also side, side, side. Okay, now there are more methods than just the side, angle, side, and the side, 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 which we'll talk about next time. So once again, if you have two triangles like this, you can establish that these two triangles are congruent by first establishing that the side FT is congruent to side RT, right, with the two slashes and two slashes. And then the side GT, segment GT is congruent to segment ST with one slashes. And then the two angles in between that, so that's the included angle. So this is the angle FTG on the left side is congruent to angle RTS on the right side. And so we established that these two triangles are congruent by side, angle, side. So here's the side, here's the angle, and then here's the side, congruent to the side, angle, side of the other triangle. And so that's how we use the side, angle, side congruence postulate to show that these two triangles are congruent. And again, the order of the letters are important because the letters here have to be congruent. They have to be the corresponding angles. They have to be the congruent angles on the two triangles. If you were to match it up, it will be exactly the same. Okay. So if you have pictures like this, once again, you can establish that the two triangles are congruent. Now, first thing you should remember is that the triangle here and here, or the arrow inside of the segment, indicates that these two sides are parallel, right? And then the diagonal segment here is what we call the transversal. And so we have two parallel sides, right? So if we were to kind of extend this, that would be the parallel lines. And then here's the transversal. And so this angle here, the XWZ or ZWX, is congruent to this angle YZW, and because that's the alternate interior angles postulate, right? So the alternate interior angles postulate are congruent. And so we could establish those two angles are congruent. And then we already know that the WX is congruent to ZY because it's marked with one slash, right? So we got angle, we got the side. So then the next side is in the middle right here. So whenever the triangles overlap, that middle segment is congruent to itself. And so WZ is congruent to WZ by reflexive property. And so we establish that segment is congruent to itself. So that's going to be congruent for both triangles, right? Because that's the side that is used for both triangles here. So these two triangles are congruent because side angle side on the top is congruent to this side and that angle and this side at the bottom. And so these two triangles are congruent by side angle side congruence postulate. And so you could use the side, or you could use the side angle side, depending on what information you know. Okay, so those two triangles are congruent by side angle side. Now, these two triangles are congruent by side angle side also, because you can see here that these two sides are congruent and those two sides are congruent. And then the middle angle is marked congruent as well. And so you can tell this goes in order: side, angle, side is congruent to this side, angle, and that side, right? The two sides are congruent, and then the angle in the middle, what's called the included angle, is congruent. And so using side, angle, side, these two triangles are congruent. Now, these two triangles is using the reflexive property in the middle, right? Whenever there's overlapping sides, it's congruent to itself, right? And so the other two sides are congruent already. It's marked, right? And then the third side is the middle one, which is kind of overlapping in the middle. And so both triangles have side, congruent to the side. So these two triangles are congruent by side. So today we talked about how you can show or prove or demonstrate how the two triangles are congruent. The first method is side, and the second method is side angle side. And then next time we'll look at a couple of more ways you can prove or show how two triangles are congruent. Okay? All right. Thank you very much.